announced that I will be going back to streaming once we are back from vacation. While she was on this vacation, Creator Clash 3 would announce its cancellation. Creator Clash 3 somehow turned out to fail even harder than Creator Clash 2, and it was all thanks to Anissa and Ian once again. Anissa would of course be found in the Discord hug box, coping over Creator Clash's failure. I just want to make it clear that we haven't had any contact or control since we publicly stepped down. Even though me and Ian were the faces of the event, many people were behind.
Brother, I've heard my share of stories. Your homeland? But I'd also heard that you once fought in a tournament.
I fought in many contests.
But this particular one, I heard you did battle with beasts, scoundrels, princesses, the undead, automatons, and history's greatest musicians. That's not true, is it?
I will not speak of this.
Fair enough, brother.
Behind the scenes making decisions together. The event wasn't doing well way before the content cop. A combo of many things contributed to that reality, including lack of promotion, influencer boxing being less popular, the economy, etc. I think what it boils down to is discord communication from everyone, even after we left, which is unfortunate. At the end of the day, I care about people getting paid for the money they were out for training and charity getting their money, and both of those things were done. There's a lot to unpack with this statement. For starters, her claims Creator Clash with lack of promotion or communication. That was Anissa's only job, to promote the show and communicate with fighters. That was the only thing she was tasked with doing. That failure falls entirely on her shoulders. Her claims of the economy being a contributing factor is just downright. Her statement about caring that fighters and charity got paid is interesting as well. I say this because one of the fighters who works for H3 initially wasn't supposed to be reimbursed thousands of dollars.
Once a local laird of renowned eccentricity chose to suggest to himself as a small coterie of organizers
Lena was finally reimbursed.
The aim of their retreat is to achieve enlightenment, to study, discipline. They took oaths to brook no distractions until they became wise men.
Distractions.
Aye, women, drink, mostly women. As you can imagine, things deteriorated quickly. By autumn, tempers were frayed and wisdom remained in short supply. One day, I watched as the laird and his brother took their hunt. There they found, at the banks of a river, a lady as fair as any they'd left behind.
No more for now. Focus.
For her training costs. Anissa would then begin to have a meltdown on Twitter over Ethan Klein, who has since vowed to criticize the Jomas forever because of their betrayal.
I am here for every second of it. And when you're at rock bottom, there's no reason that anybody should be making fun of us. You're just kicking us when we're at rock bottom. We have nothing left. We have nothing to give. Nobody's paying attention. I will be there. I will be there to fucking make fun of you, to shit on you, to ground you deeper into the ground. I will never forgive you. I will never forget, and I am going to be vindictive about you both forever. And you want to be, listen, nobody gets to claim petty bitch in my presence. Okay, Nisa? You know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Okay? I'm watching. I'll be watching you every breath you take.
Because of this, Anissa would begin tweeting in mass. I'm once again asking what my ultimate sin was aside from being married to the man who made the content pop on The King. Ethan doesn't know us as well as he claims, especially me. He's as knowledgeable about our private life as the average viewer. I have never mentioned CPS. I didn't appear in the content cop. I have only ever replied to Ethan privately with kindness despite him spam texting us deranged nonsense. His inference that I have any control over Ian's choices is from watching flop tubers' parasocial ramblings. She would also stupidly tweet out an Instagram comment Ethan once left her showcasing how kind he treated Anissa during her struggles online. For some reason, she thought this would make Ethan look bad, but it ultimately just makes her decision not to defend him look even worse. This comment showcases Ethan being empathetic to Anissa, and I have no idea how she thought this makes him look like the bad guy. Anissa acting like she's some innocent victim caught up in her husband's drama is honestly laughable. Since the release of the content cop, she has tweeted multiple antagonistic statements towards Ethan, while Ethan and Hassan are having a debate that Anissa tweets out. This is in reference to by the Tourette, which Anissa absolutely knows about, accusing Ethan of being on drugs when you know those conditions makes him twitch and sniff is just incredibly shallow. Anissa would even double down on this position when Ethan decided to respond to her, tweeting this: "Great, on the full unrated self-pipeline. He thinks I'm the evil witch. It's your manic, desperate behavior that makes me think you're on drugs. You can't even finish a sentence half the time. You want to do with it."
Prayer. He forged it. Wish I could have seen that.
I'm sure he wishes the same.
If you'll excuse me, I wish to pay my respects to your brother in my own way.
Of course. Let's go, Kratos.
Having these Twitter she received online that she's posting pictures of the food she's making. Posted on H3. The Jomos would list their house in America for sale and move into Anissa's mother's basement in Canada. Here they would continue their paywall podcast sitting on the floor with no lighting or set whatsoever. This is what everything looks like right here, folks. I also think it's funny to mention that Anissa and Ian have completely abandoned the She Wouldn't Like This podcast ever since the release of content on H3. This is probably to mitigate the amount of public backlash they've been receiving online for all of their horrible choices. And speaking of horrible choices, on August 19th, Anissa decided to announce that she was officially
Careful, brother. You're covered in wine.
Above you! Look out! Real right!
Behind you! Incoming!
Watch your right!
the trucker was not something like given the
Brother, get up, brother!
all of these terrible statements on a live broadcast, then fire up a stream of your own, like you said you were going to. Honestly, at this point, you will probably pull more viewers than your husband does. In September, Anissa and Ian's boxing coach would return to the podcast.
From above! Fight, Covered in black rock.
I'm glad we can help these aid her yards away, even if they hate us for it.
They do not need to spend their afterlife serving a cruel god any longer.
Agreed.
You know, but she made it seem to me that that was how she was. That's what she was.
That's such a crazy thing to lie about.
Yeah, she's a liar. She lies all the time, and I think she liked us because we weren't part of the world. She just lied to us continuously. And we're not gonna look it up.
I'm not gonna look up a fucking word my client's wife. Like that's not right. Fuck.
This is honestly an insane statement that I kind of doubt the validity of, but it is Anissa we're talking about, and that's absolutely something she would lie about.
So she made it seem to me that that was how she was. She was with me, and she like literally giggled like, and she was like, well.
On Ian was because she had done a porn with Mia Khalifa and a hijab. So I'm like, oh damn, she did a porn.
Hold on, what does that have?
Possible liar.
Yeah.
No sense. What did you deflect to me? I didn't care.
She's such a pathological liar. Up until like a couple months ago, she'd always told us one of the reasons that she told me that people hate on Ian was because she had done a porn with Mia Khalifa and a hijab. So I'm like, oh damn, she did a porn.
Hold on, what does that have to do with? Wait, she told us. Oh, okay. Anissa said that she was in the porno with Mia Khalifa.
This was the first conversation I had with Anissa when I first met her at the gym. Michael told me, hey, the YouTuber's coming in today with his wife, they're training, you know, come kind of meet them and film, right? And then I go and I meet her and I said to her, hey, you know, we don't really know much about the world, so are you also a YouTuber or what do you do for work? And then she like literally giggled like, and she was like, well, you know, she had a porn video that went viral. And I was like, oh my god, so I'm going to do porn at the gym. And then she's like, yeah, I had a porn video that I did with Mia Khalifa and another Muslim girl, and the three of us had hijabs on, and it was very controversial, and I got all this death threats. And then after that, I was like terrified for my life. Ian needed to protect me, and so that's kind of how I became famous, you know. So she made it seem to me that that was how she was. Like all the time, we weren't part of the world. She was just lying to us continuously. And we're not gonna look it up. We're not gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up. Fucking smart, like.
How's that?
Honestly, an insane statement. So we're talking about, and that's absolutely something she would lie about. So I'll just leave you guys to make your own conclusions on whether you believe that's true or not. He also told page 3 about a time where Anissa tried to get her to divorce her husband because she felt like he was a misogynist.
And then she told me that, you know,
about that rude girl. Never mind.
he doesn't support women. And,
I quite agree. She's an impressive young woman.
I thought you might. Well, I ain't never seen anyone quite so awesome. See you later. Don't be back in the hole.
Twitch. His broadcast was run as it usually
She was
does.
apparently quite eager to get Now that she has Mjolnir, I expect her next battle to begin training people.
I think Brock considering that hammer's finally with someone worthy. And no future about
shot his dog. I think the video obviously shows that he did. And if you are someone who believes Hassan didn't shock his dog, then congratulations, you get to join Team Anissa. Anissa would be one of the first people publicly speaking out in defense of Hassan with her tweet that read, I'm a big dog advocate, love training dogs with positive reinforcement, as you can tell with Merlin and Fiona on 8 streams. I saw Kaya while Hassan was shooting her. She had a shock collar on. She was good at her place command, but that's very easy to accomplish with positive reinforcement. I would be very surprised if this was actually Kaya that had a shock collar. I find it particularly crazy that Anissa
stands a fair maiden in need of their help across the river. The laird doesn't miss a beat. He hoists her onto his shoulders, carries her across, sets her down, doffs his cap, and forwards back across to his brother, who is dumbfounded, can't even bring himself to speak. The day stretches on, the laird carries on hunting, and his brother quietly gnashes his teeth down to powder. Finally, the dam breaks. Brother, he cries, how could you do it after everything we've sacrificed? How could you break your vow like it was nothing, carrying that lass on your shoulders like you were a Shetland pony? The laird just smiles. Brother, I sent that lass down across the river. 'Tis you that carries her still. Oh, I got a chuckle. A rare day indeed.
Instantly jumps to defend a guy's animal abuse that she's not even friends with. But when it came to defending Ethan, someone her and her husband have been friends with for years, she couldn't be bothered to do so. Anissa desperately wants to be absorbed into Hassan Piker's orbit, so it's not surprising she'll bend over backwards to defend him. The most recent controversy Anissa found herself embroiled in came on Halloween. She decided to dress up as Snape and made Ian dress up as Dobby from the Harry Potter series. These costumes are innocuous on their own, however, as you can see, Anissa made Ian hold up a trans flag in order to own J.K. Rowling. This decision would blow up in their faces, as they didn't think that portraying the gross basement-dwelling goblin as a trans character would come off as offensive. That's honestly a joke some hardcore right-wing comedian would try and make. The unexpected backlash Anissa received would cause her to delete this Instagram post almost immediately. She would then respond on her Instagram stories. The first response states, "Oh my god, y'all are the whiniest snowflake baby losers in my comments. Take a joke. Can't a husband get on his knees in a bedsheet for his wife while wearing a full face of makeup without the internet crying about it? Jeez guys, can't this woman make her husband look like a cucked fucking loser in peace? Get off her back, jeez." This first response to the backlash was obviously poorly received, as she had to make a second response apologizing. "Sorry if we didn't make it clear enough. I assumed most people understood holding a trans flag doesn't make you trans. I personally think that would have been in very poor taste to do that, and I hope people I care about, including my trans-identifying fans, didn't take it that way. I will be more clear in the future if I decide to throw another punch at the ghoul, which is J.K. Rowling." Anissa is such a failure that she can't even virtue signal to her audience correctly. This has been a running theme since the start of her online career. She constantly finds herself metaphorically stepping on rakes with almost every decision she makes. She has built an audience that absolutely despises her over the last decade, and the few people that do like her are dwindling in numbers as time goes on. If Anissa was a smart person, she would log off the internet and go get a real job so she'll be able to pay her bills in the coming years. This honestly might not even be possible though, as her nasty online footprint is massive and will follow her around forever. If you made it to this point in the video, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to learn about such a vile woman. I'd like to give a massive shout out to all of my channel members and Godofwar members. I appreciate the hell out of your guys' support. I hope everyone...
Absolutely nothing. I had to go through, dance, course, go from a nobody to the most wanted. This is the town of Valentine, and this is me, naked and full of dirt and mud. With no equipment at all, I needed to find a way to get some money. The saloon seemed a good place to do so. I managed to get a job. Bartenders need to clean some tables, probably out of pity. I was giving my best, while the rest enjoyed themselves, not caring in the slightest for people like me, people beneath them. You need to wash, bang. Huh? I was in the army once again. I wouldn't let myself be stepped on and pushed away. I would make my own path. The first step was to be swift. I stole every pocket I came across, one after the other, trying my best to not get caught. Later that night, I found some wondrous old threats man that Odin wanted this perfect opportunity.
I guess you forgot about the entrance, huh? Keep him.
I've been killing you fools since before I could remember.
And that's how I got my first weapon, a cattleman revolver. It was worn and filthy. It couldn't do anything. It was, but others. I smashed the bodies for it. Got the ammo, and the comic books. All the bullets for trouble. By now, my only breath was easy and frosted. But things would get better. The next morning, I was talking, dizzy, barely able to keep my eyes open. Standing at 2 feet. Thankfully, I had enough money to get a good amount of food. I got everything I could, from Red Bulls to canned sweet corn, crackers, coffee, everything. I took the cattle one too, but I didn't have enough money to buy any clothing. When I left the store, 2 men stopped me. They wanted me to shoot bottles off their heads to impress a woman, but things didn't go as planned. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to kill any of them. I could actually shoot the bottles. After a few rounds, they rewarded me with money. Since helping people wasn't really profitable, I delved into it. I still needed proper clothes, so I looked around for the perfect target. I stumbled upon a man sitting on a bench and told him to hand over everything he had.
Get robbed, Mr.
It took a bit of convincing, but he gave in the end.
Stay away!
Next, he asked where his home was.
Finding my way home.
I misled him, followed him, and picked his pockets while he wasn't looking. We needed more money, and I found this.
It's me. Come on, open up.
Ew. I need those people safe.
You better all be there. Yeah. I'll be back to check on you.
Something changed. Some sort of slight distance. I knocked on the door myself.
It's private. Give off.
I needed to get inside somehow. Looking around, I realized this was not my problems.
It's me. I brought food and whiskey for you, fella.
Touch on that cold mark of one or something. Put it on the test.
Do we have a task, or should we just explore?
I took everything from the till, like 50 bottles. I loaded the bodies to every coin and trinket. Then I got something better, a new revolver, Scofield revolver. Now I could dual wield. I even found a repeater, but the lawmen were closing in fast. I put on a hat from the floor and run for it.
The lad played the field. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. This is the greatest thrill of my life. I'm king of the web. Woohoo! Woohoo! Hey! Oh.
The Xbox 360 and PS3 era of gaming is, without a doubt, the one that most people look back on fondly the most. And there's a good reason for that. I mean, it really did popularize some of the all-time best franchises we've ever had. It was when Call of Duty really ramped up as a series. Plus, we had things like GTA 4, Assassin's Creed, Gears of War, and the Elder Scrolls. The era of the truly open world game. And even though I was more or less an adult by the time this all rolled around, I still have some pretty fond memories of spending a lot of my free time lost in all these worlds that generation created. And it's like people just don't get attached to video games these days the way they did back then, which is why we saw such an insane amount of hype around things like that recent Oblivion remaster. It comes from that time where life just seemed simpler.
It's a peaceful life.
And one of the series that really encapsulates that time period, albeit one that's not as popular anymore, is the Crackdown franchise. Series games where you played as a superpowered agent, waging war against the criminal element, causing pain with guns, vehicles, and hands. And what also makes this series unique is that every game was developed by a completely different studio. The first one was made by Real Time Games, who didn't really work on anything else other than the abysmal APB in 2010. The second entry was then made by Rockstar Games, whose only other real achievement was that they got bought out by Rockstar. And then the third one was created by Sumo Digital, who developed the awesome Outrun 2 Coast to Coast, not to mention more recently the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So yeah, dog, you've got three completely different groups here taking a stab at the same premise, which leaves us with three pretty different experiences.
What are you doing in my fridge, Commander Jackson? You gotta step it up, Jerry Food!
All tied together by one overarching premise and theme. And I think it's about high time that we took a look at them. So let's do that, shall we? Right, so before I get too far into things though, I do have to thank Revolut for sponsoring this video. But what is Revolut? Well, I'm going to say it once. Revolut is a fun financial super app designed to simplify your money. Used by over 50 million customers worldwide, with a new account able to be set up in minutes, giving you access to a whole range of features, virtual cards to budgeting tools. The cool side being how you can get your very own customized state-still digital card in the mail. The real bonus Revolut has, however, is a bunch of convenient features designed to simplify spending. For starters, you get more competitive exchange rates for different currencies, along with lower transaction fees, compared to what you'd be getting charged by the major banks. Revolut doesn't charge ATM withdrawal fees either, and gives you access to much more affordable eSIM cards as well as in over 100 countries. Plus, you can even create these detailed marketing installments with fiber, and on the off chance you've lost your card, you can freeze it with the app in seconds. Someone who needs to track things like data scans, manage a budget, or just have some basic money in mind, well, this app is great for helping you do all of that. So to download Revolut and get started, use the code to get $40 off your first purchase. Yeah, once again, thanks to Revolut for sponsoring this video. Starting off with the first game in 2007, and yeah man, what a year 2007 was, with some absolutely stellar titles like the first Bioshock, Crisis, Halo 3 and the first Uncharted game. We were really coming up on that point where video game developers could really create everything and anything they wanted, and in the case of Crackdown, they gave the player this large and open environment to explore at their own whim. The story is that you're playing as an agent heading to the fictional Pacific City to put a stop to this crime epidemic, all by taking out these three powerful syndicates. Also being something of a superhero in the making, as your skills and abilities are going to improve over time as you undertake missions and curb stomp that criminal scum element into oblivion. All with the booming voice of the agency's director in your head pretty much the entire time. Your explosive skills are improving. Voiced by a guy named Michael McConaughey, who, according to his IMDb page, has done voice work in literally every single thing that has ever existed. It's time to get out into the field, Agent. Anyway, the basic gist is you're running around this sandbox city as one of these nameless agents, taking on a new faction in each area, with a street gang called Los Muertos, an organised crime group called The Vault, and then a more corporate, privately owned military force called Shai Gen. With Crackdown also having an interesting way of tackling the story in the sense that it doesn't really have any missions or even a story. Yeah, like the main recurring goal is just to go around taking out all the generals for each faction, before then finally the kingpin for that group is going to be vulnerable and can be attacked and killed. So Los Muertos, for instance, is run like the main recurring goal is just to go around taking out all the generals for attack and kill. So Los Muertos, for instance, is run by a dude named Domingo Garcia. But before this guy's going to show up on the map, you've got to kill his treasurer, his physical trainer, and even his head of HR. Yeah, and if that ain't supposed to be a subtle dig at people who work in HR, I have no idea what it is.
Yolanda Santa Maria Sanchez. Hot, dirty, deadly.
The thing is, you're not actually told where any of these people are, and the only way to find them is when you get close enough, you'll then get their location on the map, along with a briefing cutscene that then plays to give you a rundown on who people are. Briefing which, by the way, doesn't really mean jack shit, considering none of these guys even have different tactics or strategies you need to know to defeat them. They've just got like 5 or 6 times the amount of health points as everyone else. And most of the time, they'll even just stand there and take it. You know, like they've just given up the will to live. Then they'll even just stand there and take it. You know, like they've just given up the will to live.
What a fucking loser.
Then once you've killed them, you move on to find the next one and repeat until finally taking on the kingpin for that area.
New agency intel agent.
So yeah, it's kind of like once you've played the game for 20 or 30 minutes, you'll essentially have seen everything it has to offer. I mean, there are like a couple of times where they mix things up a bit. Like one time you got to destroy some machinery to show one of the generals to come out of the fighting spot. Plus, you can also take over all these enemy strongholds to unlock those fast travel and weaponry supply points. But in the end, it still just boils down to finding and shooting that one person in the face for an extended period of time. Overall, though, it's a very free and open-ended approach to being able to carve your way through the game. And technically, like I suppose you could do it in any order you wanted to, even though the second and third islands I think are objectively harder. But if you're looking for deep and super complex game mechanics, well, you're not going to find them here. And it's kind of like someone came up with the basic concept and really just reused it for the entire thing, hoping we wouldn't cotton on.
Hot, dirty, deadly.
Where Kraken really shines, though, is the way it lets you improve your agent over time with these light RPG elements. For instance, if you shoot enough people, you'll increase your firearm skill, drive around and run people down in your car, or complete races to increase your driving ability. Punch enough people and you'll get stronger, and blow more things up with grenades and rocket launchers, you'll increase your explosive skills. Yeah, because that's totally how that works in real life. The more you use a grenade, the bigger the explosion's going to get. The main thing you'll be leveling up, though, by far, is your agent's agility. Because this affects their speed and jump height, making them by far the most important skill. Because getting around the city is just so much faster than you could. Now, this is all done by either beating a bunch of foot races, which is incredibly blatant markers, one after another, along with also collecting one of these several hundred agility orbs placed throughout the city, with there being a grand total of 500 of these things all up. With new agility levels coming on fairly quickly at the start, but becoming an absolute grind by the end there. And not really for any humongous benefit either. I mean, considering that even on the highest agility level, you still don't really jump all that high anyway. Plus, you've also got to worry about fall damage, which makes leaping off some of those higher structures kind of dangerous. Getting up the side of buildings can often be as tedious as all hell too, because the only real effective way to do this is by grabbing onto the side of windows and leaping up one floor at a time. Then, some of the higher buildings don't have big windows, making something as simple as vertical navigation completely spicked up. I still remember back in the day when one of my mates was talking this game up to me, saying how you could literally leap up entire buildings in a simple jump, and looking back on it now, all I can say is, what fucking game was that dickhead playing?
Bad move, agent.
Actually, it kind of reminds me quite a lot of whole construction, just lacking that useful ability where you could literally run up the side of buildings. And in fact, that actually isn't the worst comparison, considering Crackdown was originally standard title. What got ported across to the Xbox 360. Yeah, even runs on the Red engine, now made a completely modified version, which was used in a whole bunch of titles in the previous generation console, most notably the Grand Theft Auto series along with Outlaw Gold.
Kratos, I see something.
Still, though, that sheer sense of freedom that tracked down something dark, it really does still shine through, even now in 2025. And it's the kind of game that you just wouldn't see ever made these days, unless it's something that came from the indie scene. The main thing that I think it has worked against it is the shooting, which really ain't all that great. At least there's a decent roster of weapons here: pistols, submachine guns, assault rifles, rocket launchers, and grenades. And if you bring any of these back to the various strongholds, then they're going to be saved to your loadout and you can throw it out whenever you want. And using all of these is pretty standard fare, where you just kind of lock onto enemies and then shoot away until their health drops off. But then it's also got this weird mechanic where you need to wait like a second or so for your crosshair to actually shrink down. Because if you don't, then all of your shots are going to be a bit more inaccurate. But even on the higher firearms levels, this is a really annoying feature, which just kind of limits how quickly you can take enemies down. Enemies which, by the way, aren't hindered by this same mechanic. The other thing is, once you've found the machine gun and the rocket launcher, which happens pretty early on, by the way, well, there's no real need to ever bother using anything else. The machine gun has a really large magazine size and does low damage, whereas the rocket launcher is a rocket launcher and just decimates pretty much everything.
Sometimes the most obvious methods are the best.
It is old. No longer use.
But enough about you. I'm talking about the whetstone. That's all of the rebel artifacts. Perhaps we can return them to Luda.
Sniper rifle's kind of decent, but the ammo count for this thing is super low. And the shotguns are alright too, but they're only really useful at point-blank range, which is not where you're going to spend all that much time in combat. You can't cycle through locked-on enemies either, at least as far as I can tell, and when shooting multiple people, your only option is to let go of the button, hoping you locked on yourself once. Never done the melee thing. The only time I was
careful, brother. You're covered in light rock.
Throwing it. That's an old-fashioned explode of enemy. I'm shy that's not mostly traction. Then, if you take any explosive damage, your character ragdolls for a few seconds. Roll.
Enemy behind you!
I wonder how many of these fragments of Asgard there are.
Our realm's not a place, so I say we have our work to wait for us.
Like absolute game and giving the guy a surfboard, or playing a Superman game and giving the guy a helicopter. What's also not really motivating me to drive either is that the vehicles in this game control like absolute shit. I mean, I genuinely think this might have some of the worst vehicle handling I've ever seen in an open world game. With cars just often have the most bizarre physics.
Driving skills are improving.
Yeah, don't even get me started on the brain-dead AI for all the other drivers.
It's time to show these neighbors how it's done.
Overall, though, like, I get why this thing was so popular. And you got to remember that for a lot of people, the Xbox 360 really was their first game console. Much in the same way that for me, it was the Sega Mega Drive. And I get it, it's like if all you had going on in your life at the time was going to school during the day, followed by getting home and popping Crackdown into your 360, along with stashing Braid into your hard drive, well, yeah, like I could see how people would make such a deep connection with the series. But playing it now in our current year, it really is the most 2007 game I've ever played. And one which I think is largely outclassed in almost every regard by what followed, specifically with Crackdown 2, Return of the Crack. Now, Crackdown 2 takes place 10 years after the events of the first game, still set in Pacific City, and in fact, even outright recycling the entire map. Having you play as another agent named Joe, who gives a shit, choosing from their basic appearance, which, in the grand scheme of things, again, absolutely affects nothing. And now, instead of taking on 3 separate factions, you just take on one, a terrorist group called Cell, not to be confused with Dead Cell from MGS2. Who are a group of rebels fighting back against the agency, along with there also being a viral outbreak in the city which has turned the population into what's more or less zombies. And yeah, I know the game refers to them as freaks, but they all have the hallmarks of your standard cookie-cutter garden-variety zombie. That being just slowly shambling around the streets in large droves and mindlessly attacking everything that gets close to them. And yeah, like, why not? If you're gonna make a video game in the mid-2000s, well, you may as well include zombies in one form or another, right? Let's not forget that this was around the same time when the Dead Rising series was introduced, along with Left 4 Dead, and even the Resident Evil franchise still being alive and kicking, with the recently released RE5 being the highest-selling game in the franchise that far. Plus, we'd also had Dead Space, and even Call of Duty Zombie Mode in World at War had just been unleashed on the world. And if nothing else, visually and technically, it is kind of impressive seeing streets littered with hundreds of these things at night time, which is when they only ever come out, with it being near physically impossible to not constantly try to take them.
Look, over there.
Plus, they also play a big part in the overall gameplay loop, because unlike the first game that had you going around taking out those key figures, now what you're instead doing is activating vehicles in the city to kill off these freaks. Good.
It's gonna be a hot time in the old town tonight.
Which first involves finding 3 separate absorption units and standing on them until they're activated. Yeah, literally just standing still for like 15 seconds until these things charge up.
Expertly done.
Before then going to a nearby hive and defending a sunlight beacon from incoming damage until that thing finally charges up, which then wipes out all the freaks in the nearby area. Repeat this 9 times all up and then you beat the game. So really all they've done here is just swap out one repetitive action for another.
Well done. 2 down, 1 to go.
Sometimes you might need to destroy a bit of traps that block the beam from reaching the beacon. And there's also these breach points you'll need to see as well, killing all the freaks that spawn out of it before a chopper's going to come in and seal the area with an airstrike. But again, that's about it. That's about it.
Another freak escape route shut down.
It's otherwise, in every single other regard, exactly the same game as Crackdown 1. You're still going around collecting hundreds of utility orbs, in between shooting, blowing up, and punching everything else that gets in your way. On a positive note, leveling up all these abilities now actually physically affects how your character looks. With them getting different boots, for instance, when you level up agility, and getting bigger in size if your strength goes up. Your physical strength is almost at its peak. And there is definitely a lot of fun to be had here, going around whacking people with street lamps or humongous steel girders. Also, the shooting has had one massive improvement in the way that weapons now instantly lock onto enemies, without the need to wait a couple of seconds for that crosshair to shrink down. And now if you're hit by explosive damage, you no longer turn into an instant ragdoll. Both of these vastly improving how the combat feels. Even though the lock-on still has a habit of targeting empty vehicles and not one of the armed gunmen standing right next to it. And again, when you get the machine gun and the rocket launcher, you're basically just in GG mode. Plus, it's also lacking a few quality of life updates you'd really hope they would have added in. Things which had really become the standards in the industry by that point, especially when it comes to open games. Like, for instance, why can I still not swap between targets when shooting? Why can't I put down some kind of custom marker on the map? And while the night and day cycle is cool, why do I have no control over it? This one being especially important because cell strongholds are a lot easier during the day compared to night, where apparently all the bad guys have presumably come back to the base to go to sleep. And then in the case of those freak breaches, these can only be done at night time as well.
Consider that breach plugged, Agent. Good work.
Even in something as old as the GTA games on the PS2, you could go to save at any time and have your character sleep to progress the clock ahead. And yet here we are in 2010 and a basic feature like that is completely overlooked. Do you want to know what the worst new addition is? It's all these so-called renegade orbs you've got to chase down.
Catch it! Don't let it get away!
Because aside from also grabbing the 500 agility orbs out there in the environment, there's now these new renegade orbs that try to fly away from you whenever you're near. And you either have to complete these in a vehicle or on foot, with the latter being where it gets super frustrating. Because it results in these incredibly tedious chases where all you can do is your best to keep up with it, as it randomly changes its movements depending on which direction you're coming from. It really just is one of the stupidest fucking things I've ever seen in a video game.
Nicely done. And a well-earned skill bonus.
It's kind of like the sea change in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Like, yeah, those were annoying too, but at least those things followed a set pattern you could learn and memorize. They weren't fucking randomized and totally chaotic. These were all those years ago. Like, I couldn't really imagine trying to go through the entire game and get all of these things, especially considering how many of them there is all up. I mean, I'd rather shit into my hands and then clap.
Anytime.
Nicely done.
All up though, I'd say gameplay-wise, I found this somewhat superior compared to the first game. But then it is worth mentioning that by this point in time, Crackdown really had become outclassed by other superhero games. I mean, back with the release of the first game, that whole thing was unique because we really hadn't had any other superhero games come out with the 360 yet. Certainly nothing in that kind of league anyway. But then by the time that Crackdown 2 had come out in 2010, we now had stuff like Infamous and Prototype. You know, superhero games where you had actual superpowers. Not to mention all the moral and ethical dilemmas and decisions you had to face. You could shoot out lightning bolts, you could leap from the top of tall buildings, completely unharmed by them, and cause all-out DEFCON 5 level warfare in these urban environments. Plus, there was fully voiced cinematics.
Enemy behind you, Kratos!
Careful, brother!
Use the shield Enemy behind you, Kratos!
Would disagree that it's the third ones where things really lost their way.
Another camp defeated.
Aye, and one step closer to giving the realms a shot at healing.
With this really being one of the biggest disappointments ever. Outside of the one time I forgot to recharge the batteries in your mum's magic wand. If nothing else, at least this time there's an actual story and proper cinematics, with the premise being that there's some kind of global EMP attack that's wiped out all the major civilizations, with the only one still left standing being a city called New Providence. Only problem is, New Providence is run by an evil corporation called Terra Nova. Then during the game's opening, a new group of agents led by Terry Crews, because, yeah, he's in this.
We're here to light shit up.
He's sent to the city to investigate, only to be attacked before they can even get there. Which is actually a pretty funny sequence where he's in the middle of Providence. Only problem is, New Providence is run by an evil corporation called Terra Nova. Then during the game's opening, a new group of agents led by Terry Crews, because, yeah, he's in this.
We're here to light shit up.
He's sent to the city to investigate, only to be attacked before they can even get there. Which is actually a pretty funny sequence where he's in the middle of giving this super motivational speech before he suddenly just gets yeeted to the Shadow Realm. Yeah, it's the same vibe as seeing Samuel L. Jackson eat by a shark in Deep Blue Sea.
We're going to pull together, and we're going to find a way to get out of here. First, we're going to steal all this.
Anyway, as one of these surviving agents, you've been brought back from the brink by a woman named Echo, who's leading this rebellion that's trying to fight back and take down Terra Nova. This time I have to choose from a few different looking agents, with there even being female agents now, but also each of them having different bonuses too, offering up extra XP for driving, agility, firearms, strength, and explosives. So if you want to level up your driving skill, you go with the one who's got a buff in driving XP, or vice versa for things like firearms and agility. And then throughout the game, you even come across the DNA of fallen agents and can clone them to play as one of them too.
You found Agent Arm, our hunter.
But what's most unique for Crackdown 3 is that it actually has a proper story this time, with cinematics and cutscenes throughout to keep you updated on what's going on. There's even a whole prologue section with a bit of a tutorial, having you start off in this cordoned off section of the city, so you can learn all the basic mechanics before you then let loose into Providence. You've got new platforming abilities as well, like a double jump and an air dash, and those returning mechanics like the wingsuit feel way more refined. I mean, the wingsuit in particular is kind of like the gliding in the Arkham games, letting you cover great distances a lot easier. Yeah, you know, the kind of improvements and updates you'd see in an actual sequel, instead of the slight changes they made in Crackdown 2.
Now that's what I call stuff.
They've even added in new weapon types as well, with weapons doing things like fire or electric damage, with the latter one being super useful and effective against all these new robotic enemies you're going to go up against. Some of them have been pretty damn awesome, like a cryo shotgun, which, yeah, does exactly what it sounds like.
We know Asgard was more than Odin and his Ainur. If they'll help us rebuild, they're more than welcome.
And some of these high-level explosive weapons are just absolutely brutal, firing out multiple rockets and just...
I imagine a severe lack of options for the Aesir help these things along.
Oh, Mimir. It has truly been a pleasure not listening to your prattling commentary for the last 100 winters.
Well, excuse me, milady.
100 winters of Mimir beating at court? I think I'd rather be exiled.
Indeed. Well, the stories I have.
Really? Do tell.
Well, everything appears to be in order here, diplomacy administered, and all's well. Let's leave these two to their planning, shall we?
Back to it then. Where can we set up the farmsteads and the granaries?
We don't do that kind of thing here. This realm provides us what we need.
What if the winter is harsh? If the food spoils?
Then we hunger. And we learn. Perhaps had you not burned Freya for trying to teach you.
I did not light that fire. But I was there to witness. Even in death, Odin's legacy of poor leadership endures.
Working together, we can break that cycle faster than apart.
You saved me, Freya.
I did nothing.
No. I did nothing. Scratching tally marks into a cell while the world ended around me. You returned to your people. You endured their hatred. You helped them become more.
Freya and his soldiers.
They survived. They endured. But there's a reason the tide turned when the goddess Freya returned home. Your love of this place. I can feel it. Smell it in the breeze. Anyone can. That love makes you strong.
This time, instead of
Makes your
everything just
people
being a
strong.
rehash of the prior game, which really is what
Why you
Crackdown 2 felt like,
I-
even if otherwise.
Thank you.
But it still largely follows that same going around and having to wipe out all these named targets, much like the first couple of games. It's just the actions you need to take to get to that point. Uncovering these scumbags and throwing them out of their hidey holes is far more varied. Like, for instance, you might have to destroy a bunch of chemical plants or some kind of factory, or even just clear out all the enemies from a monorail station. With each of these bosses also having fights with different tactics and actual strategies. Again, yeah, an actual boss fight, instead of just a buffed up version of the standard enemy rogues. Even all those other random side tasks feel less repetitive too, like destroying enemy vehicles or rescuing prisoners from checkpoints. All of the kind of things you want and expect from a sequel. The other thing is that the amount of carnage and chaos that happens at once here really trumps anything we got in the previous games. With there just being so many enemies on screen at times and so many explosions, it's just utter pandemonium. Honestly, it often feels more like a Just Cause game than Crackdown, with there being this whole task of having to destroy all these chemical plants and blow up fuel tanks that all feels very familiar. There's a new mechanic in here as well, where the more trouble you cause, the more reinforcements the game's going to send to stop you. And this really does get to a point where you almost have to run away and try to lose the heat. The way they've tried to balance this out is with a new system where defeated enemies are now going to drop shield pickups, which will which almost allows you to start it like once. And the big question
Careful, brother. Covered in livestock.
Keep an eye on that tail!
Totally raised the bar for what people tend to expect from an open world sandbox style
Seems for every
experience.
camp we destroy, we find 2 more.
It's almost impressive.
I mean, I might not be as love with Red Dead as everyone else seems to be, but the fact of the matter is that the way that game makes you feel immersed into its world makes Crackdown 3 look like a basic bitch in comparison.
You okay, partner?
And when you also consider that this failed to deliver on one of its biggest technological promises, it really ultimately feels like a last-gen game in a current-gen engine. So yeah, it starts to make sense why people were playing this.
You're not fail-safe, you lazy piece of shit.
Still been convincing though is that they marketed the game so heavily as having Terry Crews in it, only for his character to just die in the intro, and then barely come back as this playable agent. And it's like all of the time and money they spent to get this guy in the game, or that he could just play such a small and inconsequential role.
You gotta step it up, Jay Boo!
Doesn't make any sense. Make any sense. The best thing about all of these games, though, is that they're still really easy to pick up and play. Crackdown 1 and 2, for instance, are free on the Xbox Store, and you've also got access to Crackdown 3 if you subscribe to Game Pass. And if nothing else, you can't deny that Xbox has done a pretty awesome job of making some of their titles back. Meaning getting into this thing for another week, kissing to a hula hoop. Sadly, I reckon the success or lack thereof of Crackdown 3 has basically ensured that we won't be seeing a fourth game anytime soon. But then again, that's all the video game series that lived and died of the 7th generation consoles, Prototype has to be one of the better ones. The perfect combination of 3 of the main heavy hitters when it came to video game concepts at the time. That being free running / parkour, an open world sandbox, as well as being one of the earliest examples of a game including a whole bunch of ridiculous superpowers. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, we had plenty of superhero and superpower.
I've always known that pretty man had greatness in
Spider-Man on the PS1.
that he'd do something amazing one day, and
that genre was definitely elevated.
I'm proud that now the 9 realms know it too.
Pulling off the kind of things that those previous generations could only dream of.
Anytime, ma'am.
With stuff like the Arkham series, 2, along with X-Men Origins 3.
It fits.
In fact, one of the few older games that came close to this was Hulk Ultimate Destruction, which in a lot of ways felt like an earlier version of Prototype, even being made by the same devs, Radical Entertainment. But for its time, and even still by today's standards, very few games can lay claim to being able to offer up such a vast and limitless sandbox, with a player just wreak absolute havoc.
Better get that armor nice and bloody.
It's also not that hard to see why this was so popular, considering it came out during the peak of edgy main characters in video games. In Prototype, you're playing as a guy named Alex Mercer, a 30-something-year-old who acts all dark and brooding, with his leather jacket and hoodie, claws for hands, and his smoking hot ex-girlfriend. Karen Parker.
I thought you were dead.
I should be.
Now go show it all.
It opens with a whole Castlevania Symphony of the Night thing, where it starts you out as this super powerful and very high-level character, teasing you with all these different powers during this
Get that armor nice and bloody.
Before then taking all of this cool stuff away from you, as it flashes back 18 days before this stuff happened. At which point, Alex wakes up in the morgue with amnesia, to then find himself in the middle of this pandemic that's affecting all of New York City. Turns out there's some kind of virus that's infecting the population, and the city's been sealed off from the outside world with the military brought in to control the situation.
It became clear to me that if
Getting that
Odin
armor nice and
director
bloody.
research linked us all together.
But if playing through Half-Life has taught me anything, then it's exactly what to expect in that instance.
Rescued at last, mate.
Anyway, it turns out Alex has now got all these stupid capabilities thanks to the virus, able to shapeshift into anyone he chooses, but also able to grow blades, claws, and other nasty instruments out of his body, which then sets him out on this epic quest to try and discover the source of the virus, and uncover this larger, greater plot explaining how all of this has happened in the first place. Hunted constantly along the way by a Black Ops military group named Blackwatch.
You don't even know what fucking game you're playing.
You kind of see the guys another variant of the virus that they've got to eradicate. And in other words, they're the reason why you're fighting back against so many soldiers. Yeah, just this never-ending legion of masked, generic military bad guys that you can horrifically murder however you see fit. Along with all the very strange mutants and other creatures affected by the virus, with it all coming from a mysterious woman named Elizabeth Green.
Time for it.
Walks around dressed in the kind of outfit that is absolutely the fetish of someone on the dev team.
I don't understand.
She's your typical agent of chaos, an evil kind of character who just wants to watch the world burn, with a backstory even going decades before the events of the game. So, with the help of Alex's sister Dana, they've got to try to find a solution to the virus, along with finding a way to stop both Victimith and Blackwatch. With Alex taking things so seriously throughout the story that I think if this guy even tried to smile, that'd make
Get that armor nice and
If you
bloody.
inject and consume it, it should cure it. Yeah. Heard that before.
Alright, so before I get too far into things, I do have to thank Surfshark for sponsoring the video. Surfshark is a VPN, short for Professional Private Network, that allows you to virtually travel the world, privately browse and find internet activity, along with blocking ads and, more importantly, blocking malware. With over 3,200 servers in over 100 different locations, offering up a different server for every game. There's no need to count devices either, because with Surfshark you can simply set up one account and then just use it on an unlimited amount of devices. And Surfshark doesn't collect your personal information, your online activity, or your whereabouts either. Now, I think most people would agree that the best thing about using a VPN is when you're using streaming services, due to it giving you a greater access to TV shows or movies you'd otherwise not be able to watch. Like if I want to watch Naruto on Netflix, for instance, I can't because for some reason that show isn't gracing those Australian servers. But then if I simply change my location to the UK or the US, well, then there it is. But it's even just good for gaming, hiding your location, along with also making titles available in a region you wouldn't get otherwise. And hey, I mean, if you're still not convinced, well, then there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Overall, there's really just no reason to use the internet in the current year without a VPN. So to get 4 months for free, be sure to click the link in the video description. And yeah, once again, thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Now, despite how old this game is, given that it's going on 15 years now, it still really holds up in terms of serving as an interactive and dynamic backdrop for the player. And although the island itself is flat, there is still a lot of verticality here with all the various skyscrapers and other buildings around the city. The animations and the overall aesthetic for the virus and the various effects also still hold up really well. Again, being another one of those classic examples of a good art style standing the test of time. But it's the vibe in this thing which hasn't aged a day. And Prototype is absolutely one of the all-time best examples of a game perfectly capturing the feeling of being in a city that is in complete disarray. I mean, I just can't think of any other game that effortlessly captures the feeling of what it would be like in a major metropolis if things truly ever got this bad. You got people screaming and running for their lives, there's buildings and cars on fire, there's bodies piling up in the streets, and then the military driving around trying to keep some semblance of control, which, you know, equates to them just blowing things up with a tank. It's kind of like the opening scene from that Dawn of the Dead remake, only stretched out into an entire game. And as far as societal collapse in video games go, this is hands down one of the all-time best. The only other game I could think of that had this much chaos going on when it comes to like NPC activity was State of Emergency back on the Xbox and the PlayStation 2. But even then, like all the areas in that game were a lot smaller. I mean, that was set in shopping malls and cordoned off streets made up of like a block or two. Prototype manages to pull this off within an entire city, and yeah, one based off New York of all things. And what's even cooler is that the further you get into the story, the worse things become, with that infection rate steadily climbing day by day.
Everything was getting worse throughout things across the city.
Now, the biggest comparison and criticism Prototype had at the time was everyone comparing it to Infamous, which is fair enough considering that game came out mere weeks before Prototype did. The main thing they have in common is that they take place in a sprawling metropolis in the middle of a disastrous event, with the playable character being pivotal to everything going on. But outside of that, they're really both doing completely different things. I mean, Infamous is more or less a third-person shooter, whereas Prototype's combat is almost entirely melee-focused, combined with those other moments when you hop into vehicles or pick up weapons. Traversal in Infamous is mostly just jumping up the side of buildings, mashing the X button over and over like it owes you money, whereas obviously in Prototype it's a lot more fluid. And even by the end of Infamous, when you've maxed out all the skills, Cole's movement options really can't hold a candle to Mercer's. The biggest shortcoming Prototype has is the whole morality system, or the lack thereof, which is something that was the cornerstone, not to mention the entire premise of Infamous, in case the title wasn't evidence enough. This is where your actions in the story and the moment-to-moment gameplay really affected what kind of experience you were going to get. If you're going to help all the citizens of the city and put their needs before your own, then it would change the outcome accordingly, with certain powers even being locked behind reaching certain standings. In Prototype, though, none of that stuff really matters. I mean, you're not really a bad guy per se, but even though you can go around killing civilians if you want to, it just never deals with the ramifications of all of this collateral damage. Just kind of like the game treats it as an unavoidable byproduct of being this unhinged bioweapon in a city populated with people. It's like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of damage and people are going to die. Shit happens.
Hey, shit happens.
It does kind of at times seem like maybe they were going to take that route, though. I mean, it's a side activity here where you can destroy the base and infect times. And it could have been just the way to work in an alignment system. Letting the player decide if they wanted to help the military get things under control or assist the infection in spreading, propagating their own personal decline into becoming a villain. Instead, though, you just destroy both of these things indiscriminately, with the only result being a bunch of experience points. The other thing is the story in Prototype really does have nothing on Infamous. I mean, that twist you get later in the game when you find out who Kessler is, for instance, is just the stuff of legend. And I will say too that by the end of Infamous, you pretty much feel like you're more or less a god, like a literal force of nature, able to call down giant lightning bolts from the sky to obliterate anything in your path. Whereas by the end of Prototype, you're obviously very powerful, but it's like the game still finds a way to force feed you a slice of humble pie.
And how you look and stuff, because it seems like it's making you all wiggly, like in a bad way.
It did, but no longer.
If there's one thing that Prototype absolutely nails, though, it's just how much fun it is moving around the city. It's kind of like the Assassin's Creed games, where you just hold down the run button, and your character's going to more or less navigate over whatever's in the way. The cool thing about Mercer, though, is that this also works with entire buildings, letting the player full-on sprint up the side skyscrapers, able to then use that elevation to jump into the air and propel yourself forward. Not only does this look awesome, but it's also just a really effective way to traverse the city. And the more points you put into upgrading these abilities, the better this stuff gets, letting you even dash forward in midair and charge your jumps up for even more height. A lot of this stuff is really just an evolution of what Radical Entertainment did back with whole Ultimate Destruction. And in fact, too, a lot of the moves and just attacks in general really make Prototype feel like Ultimate Destruction 2.0. The controls and the button layout, for instance, are practically identical when it comes to sprinting around, jumping, and attacking. You got the whole mechanic of being able to pick up objects and throw them at attacking vehicles, as well as this elbow drop move more or less being carried over verbatim. However, it does differ quite a bit in some key ways, considering when you're playing as the Hulk, you were more limited to just using your fists, whereas when you're playing as Alex, he's able to shift that infection around his body for morphing into various shapes. And while you initially only start off with his bare hands and can only go around hitting things, you'll soon unlock claws, as well as hammer fists, a giant blade for an arm, and then eventually even a whip. Trying to list all the various moves and combos for all these forms would be way too time consuming, not to mention boring. But in essence, the way that it works is that the fists and the claws are used for faster and more mobile strikes, whereas the blade and the hammer are for more slower, powerful attacks. Being far more useful a whole bunch of different combos. Even for the
Careful, brother.
Construction had the exact same advantage. That's not good. Firing signals in every direction and again decimating everything in range.
This is truly thankless work.
Must be done.
I'm sure the civilians were protecting your flanks. Well, I both agree.
And even after I spent like a dozen hours playing the game, it still kind of feels like you're barely making a dent. Even just upgrading things like your sprint speed and your height really goes a long way to progressing how Alex feels and controls his character. So overall, it's a fun little series of movesets to swap back and forth between and find, and it really makes you feel like a bit of a human Swiss Army knife. If that ain't enough, you can even pick up weapons dropped by all these deceased soldiers, like assault rifles, grenade launchers, and rocket launchers, the latter of which start to become essential, along with hijacking enemy tanks and choppers to liberate I'd like maybe this has something. From that point on, the amount of time one would have gone to make for some of the all-time best mistakes. The other element of the gameplay are all of those moments where first-person sneaking around the skies is human, usually a soldier or a scientist, moving through military bases undetected as he searches for clues and other bits of information. These moments are kind of like a combination of John Carpenter's The Thief and 2002. You sneak up behind someone and then you consume them, sort of like melting down into your own body before then taking on their appearance. What's kind of funny too is how you'll often do this very clearly inside someone else's eye line, only it seems that everyone's apparently got terrible vision, because they can't see this happening despite you standing mere feet away. Assuming certain soldiers serve as a way to upgrade their effectiveness with ranged weapons, you'll often unlock short cinematics, which explain more of the plot, but then consuming someone is also the fastest way to regain your health. As well as that, when you're disguised as a soldier, it's the only time you can perform the airstrikes, which sounds a lot cooler than it actually is. Because despite raining down supposed hellfire from above, these airstrikes may as well be dropping down candy floss. Finally, when you've got every single soldier, tank and chopper in the city coming after you, turning back into whatever your disguise is can be a fast and easy way to lose the heat. Which is something you will need to do quite a bit here, because this is a game where you really are the man of the hour, and enemies don't waste any time in trying to kill you. But I mean, like, let's be honest, the military is absolutely justified in trying to hunt Alex down and kill him. Because from their perspective, he's just going around causing untold damage to people and property willy-nilly, which he is. There's even a fun little stat you get at the end of a fight where it shows you how many people you killed and how much money you just cost the military from that scuffle, which can then often does end up in the billions. Holy shit! But yeah, like, it does make sense that everyone freaks out when they see you, making those disguises incredibly important. And you'll really need to spend a fair bit of time here upgrading all of Alex's abilities, or else the last third or so of that campaign is going to be a brutal experience. Off the back of that as well, you can tell that they didn't really know how to make the late game more challenging, outside of just throwing a bazillion enemies at the player at once. And the amount of hostiles you have to deal with later on is just insanity. Honestly, I don't think any other game exists that has this many choppers, tanks, and rocket launcher wielding enemies to deal with, all of which, of course, have pinpoint accuracy. Even able to shoot you out of the terrifying. Despite you zipping all over the place, like trying to headshot in the middle of the mess. Again, like the only other game I could think of that did the same thing was, guessed it, Ultimate Destruction. But at least in that case, it kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? Given you were playing as this nigh unkillable enormous green rage monster, who is just this big dumb target begging to be shot at. I mean, the Hulk is an 8 foot tall and 12 inches long titan, making him perfect for receiving countless fates. Alex, on the other hand, is just supposed to be a normal, average Sonic dude who takes his time. And you'd assume that he's so difficult with him, but yeah, I guess not. By far the worst thing about the combat, though, are the hunters. It's reasonably one of the most annoying times in a video game I've ever played. Usually they're kind of like a cross between the Hell Knights in Dirt 3 and the Lickers in the Resident Evil series. They're these super tough, infected creatures you found early on in the game, and then from that point on, you come across them fast and frequently. And not only are they fast and agile, but they're also resistant to pretty much all of your attacks and combos. For instance, where the various shockwaves and ground slam moves are going to stun those regular enemies, they do more or less nothing to these guys.
That worked.
Combo that they can almost like block to, hitting Alex like half a dozen or so times over and over and doing some pretty heavy damage. And to make it even worse, you're rarely just fighting one of them, usually like 2 or 3 at the same time. And in fact, the first time I played Prototype on my PS3 all those years ago, these things pissed me off so much to the point that I just stopped playing the game for months, before finally coming back to it after I took it off, where right away they pissed me off all over again. And if you look up the fun police in the video game encyclopedia, these fucking assholes right here are the first thing you can see. Another really annoying part of the soldiers who, I guess the guys decked out in powerful suits that can grab Alex and throw him around. And I found the best action against these guys was actually reaction, waiting for them to grab me and then countering their moves, which kind of like get on just didn't seem to ever go well. one of the biggest problems with the combat here when it comes to taking the lead is that all of the more powerful moves need to be charged up.
Presenting one thing
By
I'd like to
holding down the
note.
attack button,
The time has come to talk about me.
It most certainly has not.
What? Why not? How dare you belittle my accomplishments?
I apologize for arrogance. His volume has only increased over the years.
Why should it? I single-handedly take care of the dang world tree. Without your boy here, the realms would fall off the branches before you can take any gratitude.
He does have a point. Tending to the world tree on your own. No small task.
Of course, it's not falling here, but singing your own praises, it's awfully ghost, isn't it?
Who the hell else is gonna sing them?
Your question was?
Oh, totally forgotten.
Until next time, then. Well, I must take you further from your goings-on.
away with you already!
I am already here, Master Kratos.
Or button, or whatever it is, for a couple of seconds before it then works. And this might sound fine, but when you consider you're constantly being attacked by tanks, choppers, not to mention a bunch of soldiers with missile launchers, that means you're going to constantly be getting interrupted before you can get these moves off.
I know it's hard being here without
I'll be in my room.
Even hitting can be a frustrating process, and I've had countless times where I simply couldn't even get a heal off in time because the animation wasn't able to finish.
Would appreciate you tidying up after yourself. Now go ahead.
When it comes to hijacking vehicles under duress, it's the exact same thing. Where again, if you take any damage during any of this, which you often will, Alex is knocked off and the whole process resets. Again, I find it kind of dumb as well, how this guy who can pick up trucks, cars and air conditioning units, throwing them up into the stratosphere with insane velocity, seems to have trouble ripping the lid off a tank or the door of a chopper. So I will say again, defense, that animation you get when hijacking choppers is kind of awesome. Kind of reminds me of that scene in Aliens when the Xenomorph gets on the
I never
dropship.
thought I'd miss that bickering. But it's really not the same place without those two, is it?
We will maintain it until his return.
There are moments as well when hopping into vehicles is objectively easier than trying to kill everything on foot, especially late game when you start coming up against the tougher infected creatures. And this is something I don't think is entirely good either. Only because if you have to resort to using tanks and choppers to kill enemies in the same game where you're playing as a dictator freak who can grow humongous claws and blades from his arms, then something has gone very wrong. Wrong. The thing is, though, despite there being so many annoyances, it does eventually feel like it's big counter stuff. So as annoying as the tanks are, for instance, eventually with the hammer pit with the blade arm, you can more or less destroy these things in a few hits. Choppers are still a royal pain in the arm, but that whip lets you latch onto them from a distance, and then reel yourself in for a complete hijack. And even dealing with the hunters, your tougher attacks, like the hammer fist and the blade arm, can again finish them off quickly enough that they're not as much of a nuisance. There's even an unlockable move that lets you grab onto these guys and around it. Yeah, that's pretty awesome too. Lets you grab onto these guys and slam them around it. Yeah, that's pretty awesome too. Like most other sandbox games as well, I feel that prototypes with these stealth when you're going around and doing all the side content, ignoring that main mission screen entirely. And truly as well, the variety for all of the side stuff is actually quite impressive. Running around the city as fast as possible, trying to consume NPCs in a time limit, destroying the infected or the military in different kinds of vehicles, due to just racing across buildings and hitting waypoints like you're playing Super Dance 64. There's even a benefit to doing this stuff as well, considering you're always rewarded with more experience points. So those moments when you're making your own fun, usually redeem the moments during the story when the game's trying to do it for you. Ollie! Oh, shit! One thing that can't be redeemed, though, are the boss fights, and this might be some of the sloppiest action I've ever seen, since I handed your mum a $10 bill and asked her to meet me at the back of the gas station. Now, these fights might have been okay if they were one-on-one, but they've done that stupid old bullshit of also throwing a heap of other regular enemies into the mix as well. which just results in pure fucking pandemonium. And I don't know, man, like maybe I'm getting old and a bit senile, but it would usually take me just a minute or so to process what the hell was even happening before I could even think about formulating an actual strategy. Half the time I can't even lock onto the boss itself because of how many other threats are in the area. And I gotta say that I would be genuinely shocked if these were even play tested because they're just a complete mess. Thankfully though, there's only a few of them all up, which is handy, because ripping a band-aid off your asshole is more fun than playing with this. A little. But you know what, considering the boss fights in Infamous were also pretty crappy, at least that's something it's not going to lose points on. So overall, it's obviously a far from perfect game, but it still really does excel at what it sets out to do, which is just to be a loud, violent, and empty.
That shield don't do too much damage!
Enough!
I feel bad for the Atlanteans, and even worse for the Midgardian refugees. Learning the god they indebted themselves
to New York to help out in the fight against the virus, running into Alex Mercer from the first game, who's apparently behind the cause of a second outbreak. Instead of killing him,
didn't care for them
Mercer
at all.
claimed
Such profound betrayal.
Aye. Their homes will not be the only thing they will be rebuilding.
the innocent, purposefully injecting Hela with the same strain of the virus he got, which in turn gives him powers of his own in an effort to recruit James alongside him to bring down Gentech once and for all. Or at least so he says, because as it turns out, that's all just complete bullshit. All of it.
It's the plan.
Bullshit! Because not only was Mercer behind that outbreak, but he's also recruiting and infected a whole bunch of other people as well, in an attempt to build an up his own. Indeed, however, it is a story that works quite well. Mercer still looks like it's been designed by a 13-year-old Edgeforce, which really makes him perfect as a villain.
I'm wrong now. Are you ready?
Plus, the backstory of Hela having lost his wife and daughter gives the guy motivation, not to mention justification for his anger and rage. Alongside that, it also helps that Hela is actually a likable character.
Oh, shit. I thought I did wrong.
There being lots of clever and humorous little interactions throughout the campaign, a few of which had me giggling to myself like
Keep doing it first. First, I'm pressing the red button. Shit. Don't fuck up. Shit's broken. Okay, Chris, alternate key. ALC on. Don't fuck it up. I'm fucking stuck right. You would have tied on it. I'm trying to keyboard in this anyway. Well, calm down. You can phone with a blue going around. Okay, that's what we're doing.
I mean, like, don't get me wrong, it's still grim, dark, and it gets the best times. But there's the intent here of things not taking itself quite as seriously. As before, Prototype 2 does a great job at capturing the feeling of being in a society that is completely deranged, or at least heading that way. This time the city is broken down into 3 main islands or zones, with the infection getting worse in each area. So the starting area is in the green zone and things are pretty calm, with only some light religious threats, but other players
Ready that shield!
Take care of the rider first!
Use the shield strike!
Careful, brother! You're covered in live rot!
all your locomotion skills. So you're not safe.
Goodbye!
Combat, you can now find the light button. You know, just do heavy attacks now, you simply just hold the button down.
I believe that was the last stronghold of the Aesir.
There's a couple of new tricks you
Odin's
can like
oppressive ways have finally ended.
Are you satisfied?
Yes. Perhaps the realms may finally find peace and healing.
and instead enemies make them unable to move. And the heavy attack for this thing creates a black hole that sucks everything nearby into it. A move which I used far too many times to count. But by far the best improvement with the combat is when it comes to fighting all of those tougher enemies, like the Brawlers, which are more or less prototypes with versions. The reason for that is that you've now got an incredibly useful proper dodge move, which lets you jump over the back of an enemy during combat to attack them from behind. Also kind of locking you into combat with that one enemy so you don't lose track of them. And this is such an improvement over the first game, where it's just this mess of having things leaping at you from outside your field of view. Even when you've got like 3 of these arseholes coming at you at once, it's still far easier to actually keep track of what's going on now. Plus, too, it kind of feels a bit like the evasion move from the Arkham games, where Batman would do a similar technique to avoid you taking a hit. And I mean, yeah, like if you're gonna steal confess. Even some of the other moves feel like they've been lifted from similar titles. Like Hella's pounce move with the claws, for instance, is kind of similar to the one that Wolverine does in X-Men Origins. Yeah, and also that spinning tornado move you do with the claw arms is very reminiscent of another move that Logan had in that game too. Grab an enemy and continue to help you. Moving that fumbling around you had to do with the first game when you tried to latch onto something. But even the stuff that isn't necessarily new, like, it just better. The hammer fist, for instance, it's kind of like they combine the fist from the first game, but then also the ground spike you could do with the claw hands, as well as incorporating the dive bomb attack when you're dropping onto the enemy from high up. Yes! That's awesome! And using these things is so much fun now that I'm kind of surprised it didn't get banned in Australia. Yes! Oh yeah, and I really like how it has its own unique...
think the norms are quite done with this
I'm
place.
kind of surprised it didn't get banned in Australia.
Yes!
Again, I really like how it has its own unique finishing move, where Hela basically gives the enemy a shuriken. The fact as well that you're not just fighting the same looking hunters over and over also makes it feel far less generic, with there being different strains who all act differently. The only thing that's relatively unchanged is the disguise mechanic, which functions exactly the same. The only real difference, I think, is that you've now got the stealth option from the get-go. And overall, like, that's just the general feeling the gameplay's got through. Like, they really does look at the best ways to streamline the fun of the mechanics in the first game. So the Devastator move makes a return, for instance, but there's now only one option, with it literally being a combination of the couple we got in Pro 1, which means that it both shoots out the tendrils in all directions, as well as having the spikes protruding from the ground. This then has the benefit of freeing up a slot for a new move. You can call in up to 3 hunters at once to attack enemies with one arm.
Oh shit, Heller's still alive. It's like he's controlling the infected.
And mechanics like that really never do get old. On top of that, instead of just getting a bunch of upgrade points at the end of the mission or from killing enemies and spending them with no real game plan, now you're instead leveling up after a certain amount of XP, and then choosing from one of 6 categories to put points into, which usually even upgrades multiple things at once. For instance, you don't need to upgrade your sprint speed, your air dash, or your jump height individually. Now they'll all be upgraded at the same time. You don't need to upgrade your moves like the claws or the hammer fists. You just need to find infected out of the environment and consume them to improve those abilities. Which is a lot more fun than just dropping a bunch of arbitrary points on something in a stacked menu screen. For all the various improvements to everything else, you learn these through completing side missions and finding collectibles. Like if you find black boxes in a section of the city, take out a few field op groups in the area, or head underground and wipe out the line. You're rewarded with invitations that help us go through various categories. It's speed, health, one of the best ones in the game, which makes you invulnerable to some alarms. There is something so awesome about being able to walk around while everyone's shooting at you and it's doing absolutely fucking damage. These collectibles aren't put in obnoxious sort of hard-to-find places. You play most hints as to where these are in the city, make it impossible to find them in. Tanks, for instance, still move around like they've got a whole lot of weight to them, but now they feel more like actual tanks, instead of a shopping trolley that's got a busted wheel. And then defensively, the shield is now bound to its own button, so it can pull this thing out whenever you need it, and if you time it right, it can even deflect missiles right back at its target.
That's good stuff.
Which completely alleviates the nuisance those vehicles and enemy types caused. Even just using the shield to parry the tougher enemies like the hunters and the super soldiers, I mean, it's such a simple inclusion, but it goes a long way in making those enemy types far more manageable. And, you know, reminding you that this is supposed to be a power fantasy, which it is. And I feel like I say this in every second video, but I really can't remember the last time I had this much fun just playing through a video game from start to finish.
From the act of 9 seconds.
My metric on how fun a game is kind of based off how angry I get when I play it, along with how often my wife has to come in the room and
any of these challenges catch your eye.
Mario Prototype 2 without ever having to step foot anywhere.
Get ready!
After I downloaded, and outside of the soft I do find it kind of wild how this game apparently
Right side,
Although both of these games retain their title as some of the all-time best power fantasy experiences ever made. And going back and replaying them now, even though they're only a decade or so old, they really do feel like something from an entirely different era. There's just that understated simplicity to a game where you can nonchalantly go around melting mercenaries with your torso, along with elbow dropping onto military tanks and slicing people in half and then all getting clipped. And for all the time and money that modern devs spend trying to accomplish the same things, they still can't hold a candle to that unrestricted sense of freedom that an old PS3 and Xbox 360 title from back in 2009 and 2012 did.
Jay Santos. Oh, runner-up for the Glenn Scholarship you received that allowed you to attend this university. I don't know where Jay Santos is, but if he were here, I'm sure he would have been on time for his midterm. Think of this as a learning experience, Philip. Things do happen, so we have to anticipate that they might. I'm sure next test you'll leave plenty of extra time and arrive.
Getting someone? God of no one! For my fallen sister! And this is for mine! You're
Plenty of extra time and arrive early.